Welcome everyone to NFP's 2023 U.S. Benefits Trend Report launch. Thank you all so much for joining us. Because we want to get as much information to you today as possible, it is unlikely that we will be able to answer all of your questions during the webinar. However, please feel free to send questions through the Q&A located on your Zoom menu bar, and we will do our best to respond after the call. Today's presentation is being recorded. We will be sharing the recording in the coming days. At this time, I'd like to hand over the call to Kim Bell, Executive Vice President and Head of Health and Benefits at NFP. Kim, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Amber, and thank you all for joining us today for the official launch of the 2023 U.S. Benefits Trend Report from NFP. We're excited to share our thoughts on the upcoming trends in the benefits arena, as well as the thoughts of the employers and employees that we included in our survey for this report. Note that HRCI credits are available for those who attend this webinar, but you need to attend for 45 minutes or longer to be eligible for those credits. We'll provide details for those credits at the end of the webinar, as well as in a follow-up email tomorrow. Career well-being is a top trend we address in our report this year, and when you dive into what career well-being really means in today's knowledge work era, where we use our brains for work, we use our brains for a lot of things, but definitely for work. We are really talking about focusing on brain optimization training and mental fitness skills at work in order to thrive and grow in our careers. So today I am so excited to introduce our keynote speaker, our very own Deb Smolinski, our SVP of and Wellbeing, our practice leader for Wellbeing and Engagement here at NFP. Deb is an absolute expert in her field and will be sharing highlights and some tips from her upcoming book, Brain On, with us to help you get the most out of our time together today and hopefully your work days as well. So with that, Deb, take it away.
Thank you, Kim. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be kicking off our National Trends Report. And I bet you've never seen a slide like this in a work presentation, right? I am the opening act. I am here to help prime your brain, as Kim said, give you more energy, not only for our time today, but also hopefully for your future work days. And so I am going to be covering some key points from my book, especially the foundational concept that our brain is our computer. That's what we use to get work done and to live a healthy life. But in addition, it goes beyond mental health, so I'm going to cover that. Mental well-being is really what I'm focused on in this book and want to share with you today. And it's all about mental fitness. So mental well-being equals mental fitness. It's the only way to upgrade our brain. But we're talking about behavior change. And so in my book, this character Onyx is used in two reasons. One is I named it Onyx after a month of deliberation because I wanted something to remind us to keep our brains on, but also to remind us that our thinking brain turns off immediately after we turn it on by putting the Y before the X. So that is kind of how I got the name, but really because behavior change is hard, especially when you can't see it being done, you can't feel that strength being built. Onyx is here to kind of help us understand what we put our brains through all day long, especially at work. So I'm going to cover later about how the workplace is our actual gym. But first, Kim mentioned we have a lot of trends to cover, and I want to start with the most pressing one, which is mental health and substance use disorder trend. And really, I just want to share here so we're all on the same page that this is absolutely necessary, and it is on the top of everybody's list, but it's an umbrella term. And what we're really talking about with this trend is the clinical focus, right? Access to quality care, therapy, RX, and also making it affordable. But really what I also want you to know is it really only supports 20 to 30% of your given workforce at a time, right? And so when you put in great solutions like EAPs and the other things listed here, you're really supporting and absolutely should support these 20 to 30% of your population. But what my book's about and what I want to kind of challenge us to start to think about is that our days are filled with challenges, and we can't call our therapists, 24/7, although I wish we could sometime. So life is becoming increasingly sophisticated and complex, and the only way to combat that was by becoming sophisticated in our thinking, and that's kind of the premise. So you take what you have, and I guess approaching it as an and, right? We need to flip the script and add mental well-being to our solutions. It supports 100% of your employees because we all have brains. It's preventive in nature. And really, the solution is skill building, like awareness training and things that we'll be talking about today. So that's what I wanted to kind of lay the foundation for, because ultimately we really need to start building mentally strong organizations. And if you've joined us the past couple of years, that's been our mantra. And you also remember that if you're an organization, and most are, that say people are our best assets, well, that's really only true if they're brain on and in their thinking brain, right? Otherwise, errors get made and conflicts occur. So we're really talking about being brain on, but it's harder than you think, especially for you all, which is really trying to manage this balancing act between your employee's brain, the collective organization brain, and your own brain. And this picture is a little deceiving because it makes it seem like you're on flat footing, but really the environment is really shaky. It's really called the VUCA environment: volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. Right? It takes a lot of mental strength because your employees hit bottom, with all their financial stress, the overwhelm at work, too much to do, and the list goes on and on. Basically, we spend most of our days at work, and the work day is winning the rounds here. We're lucky if we get, out of the ring the full 8 rounds or whatever hours we work, but more than likely we kind of suffer through it. And on the opposite side, as a collective, the organizational culture, we hit bottom there collectively with all of these things going on in our environment. And these are the buzzwords just from 2022. It's absolutely insane. So lots to balance. And so I wanted to spend my time with you really focused on supporting you, because you're at the crux of it, right at the center of it. And you're keeping everybody else's brains, on, hopefully, while you're also trying to manage yours and the crazy environment around us. And so before Brain On, the go-to saying was just put your oxygen mask on. But as I was writing this book, I'm like, that's as good as we can do. Like, if our oxygen mask is on, there is something serious wrong with the plane. And that is not how I want to live. That is survival mode. So really, we need to start being proactive and start thriving. And mental fitness will do it. Strengthening our brains to be more productive, more calm, more happy, creative, build stronger relationships, better learning like we are today, being more resilient, and better well-being. I got news for you. Our brains didn't come programmed to do all of this. These are all skills. These are all things we have to wire our brains for through mental fitness, so that when you're mentally strong, then you can balance whatever comes your way, including these crazy environments that we live in and work in. So it's simpler to say this, I know, than to actually do it. So let me just give you some insight into what we're challenged with, and that's how our brains really are designed and work. Our most powerful technology is our brains, but I also say it's the most ancient technology ever known to man. It's 2,000 years old. We haven't received any upgrades, and its primary and sole job is to keep you safe, to procreate and keep the human species alive, not to thrive, not to be happy, not to build strong relationships. So this is what our brain looks like every day. It's ancient. We're running on DOS computers and flip phones. You wonder how our organization survives sometimes. But between you and I wanted to make sure we know why that is and what programming really relates to it. And I think by now, through the pandemic, we know there's 2 parts of our brain. We have the fear brain, the primal response: fight, flight, freeze, dissociate. We also have the prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain. That is our computer. That is how we get things done. That's where we live our best life, from that conscious point, which is why I say in the book, entitled it Brain On, it means turn this thinking brain on. For those of you that can go way back with me, it used to be, oh, I should have had a V8, right? Oh, like, we know to turn the brain on. We push it right where our prefrontal cortex is. So that is what Brain On means. Even that, though, isn't easy just to push the button. It's really hard. Why? Issue one, only one of these parts of your brains can be on at a time. You flip between fear mode, and prefrontal cortex, higher thinking mode, right? Fear mode, prefrontal cortex, brain on mode. Only one can be on at a time. Second, guess what one is always running? Yeah, the fear brain. It's your default brain. That is why we are alive today. That is its sole job. So, of course, that program is always running. And now we have to turn on our thinking brain consciously to get any work done, to live our best lives. And issue three is we've never been taught this. So that's what I'm hoping to accomplish. I hope this will be beneficial to you, but I really see the workplace as that place now to introduce these important concepts so we can all start to thrive. Time to upgrade our brains together. So that's all theory. Let me put it together. This is the program your brain is running all the time. We have 30 to 60,000 thoughts. 95% of them are the same as before, right? What do I wear? What do I do? Where am I going? 80% of those thoughts are negative, right? That negative fear-based, because the job is to keep us safe. So your brain's filter goes through every piece of data. First funnels, is it a threat? And then potentially after it decides it's not, it goes into the reward. On top of that, 47% of the time your mind is wandering. Come back to me, come back to me. And according to Microsoft in 2012 in their study, our human attention span is less than a goldfish at 8 seconds. It really makes my job hard right now. But needless to say, this is what we're experiencing as our default all the time. Who's opened an email and this is what you feel like? I know I have. Who sent another email right after that and you're like, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. These words are speaking are what our brain is thinking, right? And so rarely do we stay brain on. You have to turn it on first and be in that mode. And so you're not supposed to put all this text on slides. I get that. But I feel like we don't really even know what it's like to be brain on. How many of us can really look at 5 emails in a row and say, oh, I'm so calm still? Yeah, I don't think so. Or, oh, this was so fun. Or I'm so happy. It's really rare because, again, the default is just to keep us safe. So you take that programming and then you apply it to work. Here's what happens. Poor brain goes in and out of this obstacle course called the workday, constantly being challenged with obstacles left and right, hardly being able to keep the brain on. Right. And so that is my point. That is where I flourish. That is what NFP focuses on, is helping you and your employees thrive at work. And that is what we want to cover. So our workday right now, I have, I don't know, maybe 20 more minutes left in total to talk to you about this, maybe 10. Don't freak out, Kim. I'm watching the clock. But I want to go right there. What does our obstacle course look like just in the next 45 minutes of our time together? More importantly, I want to share with you, how can you stay brain on? So what are the 2 biggest obstacle courses we have in the next 45 minutes? They're what you have every single day. It's your phone and it's trying to multitask. So if you're on your phone right now, or you're listening to that notification, or you're trying to check a text, please know this all reduces your brain power and you can't stay brain on, especially multitasking, right? It's really not a thing. You go monotasking, you're switching back and forth. Remember, each part of your brain can't be on at the same time. You can't be looking at the screen and also deciding what you want for lunch, right? You can't be watching CNN at the top, listening to or whatever news channel, and watching the ticker below at the same time. Multitasking is a killer of brain power. So what do you do just for these global arching obstacles? The muscle exercise here, and you can do at least 150 brain reps of this, is just to notice. Notice that urge to check your phone when you get bored, or notice that urge to answer that ding when you're in a meeting or you wonder what's going on. You notice and then try to focus back on what you were doing prior. Notice, direct, notice, redirect. And then eventually you'll focus and then you'll notice you're falling away and redirect. That's skill number one. Very simple skills, very hard to do. Okay, within the 45 minutes, we're really going to talk about trends. So how does this even apply to the concept we're focused on in this meeting? Well, trends equal change, and change equals brain off, right? And so before you even start to listen or work on trends, you need to ask yourself, what's my brain's working around change? What's my relationship to change? Are you a trend setter? Are you a trend adopter where you wait till like the kinks get out and then you're like, okay, let's go? Or are you like, and the trends, la, 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 right? So it's all right. There's no wrong answer. It's how you're wired, but it tells you when your brain is going to go off in the process of evaluating trends. From then, you also want to know what your energy level is. We just push through until we just drop over. But you can't be open to creative thinking, to innovation, which is what trends are, unless you're fully energized and fully brain on. So, if you say, I can't right now, you really can't right now. Just, walk away and get some rest. And then finally, as you evaluate these trends, you're going to be excited about some, but even though that program is going to jump in and you're going to need to be aware when you go brain off, because you will. I talked about the program. So listen for those triggers of when you're brain off, even while you're evaluating exciting trends. I've heard, oh, that will never fly, a limiting belief, or you're a prediction machine. Oh, my employees will get so confused. We are not even going to go there. Okay, well, you're predicting something, and a trend can just be a threat. Interesting. I think we should just wait. Let's just wait till next year. These are all words we say to actually articulate we're brain off and not really open to that change or in a growth mindset. So what can you do? You can do really easy breathing exercises. Nobody knows you're doing it. This is a great hack at work. I do it like all the time in meetings. You just glance down from the stimuli. You take 3 breaths, because your breath is your lever or your light switch to turn your brain back on. Once you're in brain off, you breathe. And so this comes from Google, and it's just 3 easy breaths. In the first breath, you just kind of clear your mind like a raceboard. Second breath, you relax your body. And third breath, you bring to mind somebody that makes you happy, because it makes you smile. And if that doesn't work, or you want to try something else, gratitude is a superpower. Even here, if somebody's chatting a good idea, say thank you, that was awesome. That literally brings you back online. So I've covered a lot. You can pre-order the book. That would be, just awesome. And I'd appreciate that support. But more importantly, I want to invite you all and your employees to join me in our webinar and my official book launch, where I'll be talking more about this on 8/8. So to wrap up though, let's get back to the trends. Your warm-up is almost done. What I want you to do as you listen to the trends is one exercise, and one exercise alone. Ask yourself, as you go through and hear answers, oh, what emotion am I feeling? Am I brain on or brain off? Did that trigger me? And then if it did, that's okay, because that's part of the program. Go back to just your 3 breaths, right? And so if we could, because my job is to get you ready for the trends, just do this together really quickly. I'm going to walk you through really quickly, and then let's do it. So you're going to first take 1 breath, clear your mind. Second breath, you're going to relax your body. And third breath, you're going to bring to mind somebody and say, may you be happy. So breath 1, clear your mind. Breath 2, relax your body. And breath 3, bring to mind somebody that makes you happy and wish them well. Awesome. Awesome job. Thank you so much for your time. I think you did a great job. I am going to turn it over to Kim for the main event now.
All right. Thanks so much, Deb. I think one thing that Deb didn't mention is that in Brain On, and I know some of you are asking, like, how does this apply to the trends? And we're going to talk a lot about stress and mental well-being and mental health in the trend report. But there are portions of Deb's book that are dedicated more to human resources and how human resource folks can help their employees. And then there are sections of the book that are dedicated to employees. So I think that the whole, our mental fitness abilities and our skills there are so important for the world we live in today. So thanks so much. Hopefully everybody has their brain on as we approach this next section of the report. So what we wanted to do is have a bit of a panel discussion. We've done this for the last couple of years where our practice leaders here at NFP, including Deb, they are the ones, frankly, who contribute to this report, do all the research in this report. Obviously, our marketing folks help us with the surveys and putting it all in the format that you'll see, and hopefully very much appreciated as a labor of love here. But our panel of practice leaders and subject matter experts are experts in their field. They all have years and years, and they're not old, but they do have years and years of experience in their respective fields. So you do know Deb. We've already introduced Deb as the practice leader for well-being and engagement here at NFP. Heidi Cottle is our practice leader for cost containment here at NFP. And Maria Trepanasso leads our human capital solutions practice. So thank you so much to all of these ladies who have been so helpful in creating this report. This is months in the making, so we hope you enjoy the trends that we're going to talk about. Obviously, we can't talk about everything here. We're going to highlight as much of it as we can, and we'll take it from there. So here we go. Let's get started. Before we jump in, we do want to just, explain a little bit of the premise of this year's report. So at NFP, we certainly understand that in this post-pandemic environment and in the face of all the economic uncertainty we're facing right now, employers remain driven by opportunities to provide comprehensive benefit solutions that positively impact their employers' lives. We also realize that in years past, you're faced with a lot of challenges. And so our trend report is designed to examine those challenges. Obviously, we don't hit 100% of the challenges, but hopefully we're hitting the high points and provide actionable insights and recommendations that you might want to consider in your strategic planning. So let's jump to the next slide. These are the topics of the trend report and the topics we're going to touch on today. Holistically mitigating the effects of cumulative stress. So obviously we're going to have a lot of brain on in there. Aligning culture and benefits, and maintaining affordable benefits. Obviously, none of it matters if we can't afford it. So let's jump to the panel, and we're just going to jump in with more of a Q&A structure here. I'm going to host the Q&A in one spot. Maybe I'm going to actually be the panelist, but other than that, we're just going to jump into the Q&A. So in our report, we recommend allowing employees to create flexible work schedules, but we also discuss the need to embrace flexibility beyond hybrid work. So let's dig into that a little bit more. Maria, can you speak to the assessment process we recommend for evaluating and informing clients on what type of flexible work arrangements might be appropriate and efficient for their organization, as well as the pros and cons of hybrid or fully remote work arrangements?
Yes, certainly. Thank you so much, Kim. Really happy to be here today. So, Human Capital Solutions always takes a holistic approach when making recommendations to our clients. So, the first thing to really take a look at is your organizational structure. What is your culture? You really need to understand what your organization's requirements are. And then, of course, surveying your employees. You're not going to really understand your employees' individual needs unless you ask them. Companies really need to be productive. And at the same time, flexible work arrangements don't look the same for every employee. We found that 61% of employers actually say that they are very concerned, and they understand the importance of work-life balance for their employees, and they are working towards an employee-centric organization. It's time for employers to really get creative, with what they're doing. So while some organizations are operating a fully remote workforce, we found that those who have a hybrid workforce really get the best of both worlds. The hybrid approach really allows the flexibility for employees, while at the same time It really permits, that in-office collaboration, employees working together at the same time. That fully remote, workforce operations allows employers to really tap into, an expanded workforce and a talent pool. However, it comes with its challenges. Employers are really going to need to make sure that they are looking at state compliance regulations, what the tax implications are, and of course, employment regulations. So that leads to, really understanding what needs to go in the employee handbook, what state regulations are going to affect policies. They need to reevaluate what they're doing policy wise. And, this is really definitely a challenge for those employers who maybe, have been one or two state employers for such a long time. These are definitely challenges that they need to look at. And so, overall, I think employers really need to make sure that they're being very intentional when they look at what's best for their workforce. They need to make sure that they understand what their employees' needs are, but understand as well what their operational needs are. That's really key.
Okay, thanks so much, Maria. So, Deb, as you think about flexibility beyond hybrid work, and I think you touched a little bit on it in your brain on, can you speak to how flexibility as an institutional norm goes beyond where employees work, whether they're in the office or not in the office?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's an important concept because flexibility by definition sits in career well-being, right? For high career well-being, you not only need mastery, purpose, relatedness, you need autonomy. And so autonomy in not only where you work, when you work, how you work. And what we've seen and have seen is that pre-pandemic career well-being was really hard to kind of implement as programming goes. It was like an elusive vision, but after the pandemic, most everyone got a taste of full autonomy, right? Not only that, and related to work, they got to prioritize life and work every day in terms of autonomy and flexibility. And so that is the bar they have set. And that is the bar you're looking towards. So knowing that flexibility just really needs to kind of be this umbrella philosophy when you're deciding everything around career well-being, because something that's not flexible is inflexible, right? Rigid, and that creates stress fractures, breaks in not only the culture but also the people practices and the people's experience.
Okay. All right. Well, now we're going to talk a little bit about financial stress. So, I think there's a lot of studies out there talking about just stress in general. And we're gonna also talk, later in the report about the sinking of culture and benefits and that kind of thing. But I think that what we found in our in our report was that there's some misalignment in the way employees feel about 65. For example, a recent MetLife study showed that 65% of employees say they are mentally well, or of employees said they are mentally well, while 85% of employers felt their employees were mentally well. And that same kind of ratio applied on the financial stress side of things. So um, you know as we try to figure out financial tools to help our employees, and there's all kinds of reasons for that financial stress. It might be benefit designs are putting pressure on them. It might be unexpected life events. Life is happening, so the economy is putting pressure on people. We know inflation is putting stress on people. So as we think about given the distinct connection between money and the bottom line performance, things like productivity, attendance, and engagement, employees need to demonstrate that they genuinely care about how the tools and the resources that are in place to help their employees in these financial situations. So one way that you can do that, and I think many of you have heard about, there's such an uptick in voluntary benefits, but you can tailor voluntary benefit selections to employees' unique needs. I think the day and age of, hey, there's a couple of benefits out there, they're valuable, they're not valuable. There is such an array of voluntary benefits today that allow your employees to pick and choose what really makes sense to them. And there are a lot of, the supplemental health benefits in particular really help the employee mitigate the cost, the out-of-pocket costs that they have with those high deductible health plans and that kind of thing. I mean, let's face it, we don't have $250 deductible plans anymore. We have $2,000 deductible plans. The average employee doesn't even have $1,000 in their savings account. So, the pressure that they have with any kind of medical situation that happens with them and their families are an issue. So we're seeing so many new players in the voluntary benefits space, that they're transforming. It allows them to personalize what they want. They can pick and choose, and it's really not a lot of financial stress for the employer because they're voluntary. The employee is paying for them. They're not expensive benefits, but it does make a difference in helping your employees manage their financial stress. We even have I mean, so many of the new ones that are coming to fruition. There's a home health. We have a company called Armadillo that is offering home warranty voluntary coverage, where they can, things go wrong in your house. You need a new refrigerator. That's not cheap. I mean, those are stressful situations that are happening in your employees' lives now. So on the financial stress side, there's so many solutions out there, and we'll touch on it a little bit more. But there's permanent life insurance with long-term care. There's just all kinds of voluntary benefits that your NFP advisor can help you with. So now we're going to switch a little bit and move over to Heidi. So we know, Heidi, that employers are experiencing their own dilemma tackling the financial stress that comes with the struggle of reining in healthcare costs. So that's been a problem every year, and we know that's an employer stressor. In the ever-rising cost of providing health benefits, there is an ever-growing consensus that further shifting the burden of premiums to the employees or the workers is not tenable. So
Yeah.
can you speak to how greater transparency, we're hearing about all these
Yeah.
transparency regulations that are coming into play. Can you speak to how those greater transparency um, pieces or components are
Sure.
playing into an employer's spending and negotiated rates and that can help change that narrative?
Yeah, I should probably start by asking how many people are in that stressor part of your brain right now. Once Kim brought up legislation, right? That is a trigger term. But what's favorable about some of these new transparency laws is that this is the first time that we have seen the cost of healthcare procedures in over decades. And so it begs the question, as Kim asked, how do we incorporate those effectively into our healthcare plan without creating a lot more disruption and stressors into the plan? I think there's three really key ways that we can do that. And the three key elements are one, cost and quality are not synonymous. So, although these new legislative laws are bringing forward cost accountability, it's only one necessary component of the equation. Quality and access are equally important, but we've demonstrated that by centers of excellence, that we've demonstrated that quality care can also be delivered affordably. So I think that's really key. The other is that the tides are changing. Employers, now that they have visibility to the real cost of care, are beginning to take a more active role and position in purchasing not only of health insurance, but health care. So there are several examples that we've already seen in the industry where that active role that employers have taken have, brought basically saying, look, we're going to remove this high cost hospital. But what they've done is that they've communicated up front that they were going to offset that disruption with the plan participants by sharing in the savings through bonuses and raises, which came across very positively to the population. But the third, so this is another trigger back in your stress brain, is that in this new piece of regulation, there's a fiduciary responsibility assigned to the plan sponsor. So we're watching that very carefully, but that oversight, which employers are already doing today, it's like what it was 25 years ago in retirement. It's being able to look at reasonability and prudence and apply it appropriately. So stay in the positive side. This is great. We have new visibility to the cost of care as we approach managing our costs.
Very good. All right, well, let's move on to the next section, aligning culture and benefits. So we know employer and employee perceptions of what's important are somewhat out of sync. We talked about that just a few minutes ago on the financial stress and on the mental health side of things. 61% of workers believe it is their employer's responsibility to help them achieve their best quality of life. So whether you agree with that or not, I mean, that's the perception. Ultimately, workers want to be a part of an organization that cares, one that supports them personally and professionally. When things like organizational culture, well being initiatives, benefits and total rewards, career development, when they're equitable and in alignment, organizations reap rewards. When they're not in alignment, then there's problems that have to be solved on top of the problems that you have when even they're in alignment. So we know intrinsically that in order to make sure we're meeting the needs of employees, we must first determine what it is that the employees want. This can be facilitated, as you know, through carefully executed pulse surveys, ongoing benefit discussions, regular benefit communications. So let's jump into some of the questions around this that we discuss in the trend report. So Deb, we know that ultimately incorporating care elements into a holistic well-being matrix supported by organizational culture, flexibility, and career development can bring an organization more in sync with current employee expectations. We have already addressed flexibility in our earlier discussion. Can you speak to what we mean by the holistic well-being matrix, particularly as it relates to mental health and well-being?
Yeah, sure. So again, the definition, like holistically, I think it first represents your program, your well-being program. And it's important to know there's 5 really core elements to human thriving that all integrate. So we're talking career well-being, which I mentioned, physical, mental well-being, social well-being, where at work we are connected, belonging, your DEIB, and then community well-being, a broader mission outside your organization, and financial well-being, which we just talked about. So holistically, those are the core elements that need to be analyzed and incorporated when possible. Holistic also refers to the philosophy, meaning it's not siloed and it's not one-off interventions. It's holistically and foundationally woven into the people experience so that at work I can feel it, I can see it, and I feel that support system as the whole person when I work in your organization. And so that is very important. But to your point about mental well-being and mental health, like I said in Brain On, which I wanted to really emphasize, is it all starts here, right? Healthy mind equals healthy life equals healthy organization. So you start there at the core, and that's critical because if you're not brain on, nothing else works right. And so that's critical. And then once you've tackled that, also from a holistic lens, you want to make sure each of those elements, those 5 core elements, are at least on your radar and you're focusing on them. Why? Well, we see that if there's a gap and you're not focused on all of them, that stress or that fracture rises to the top, just like hot air. So we saw that with mental health. 3 years ago, we weren't focused on it before the pandemic, and now all of a sudden we're all in. And even recently, we then haven't been focused on social well-being lately. And the Surgeon General in our trends report, we highlight, made the announcement that we have a loneliness epidemic. And now, so when we don't focus holistically, then we miss the core functions of how we operate like as a human being.
Yeah, I think it's so important, the silo conversation, because I think as we solve problems, we tend to solve problems in a silo. Like, I'm going to solve this one, then I'm going to move to this one. And I think the holistic approach is we have to be focused there. So, okay, Maria, what are your thoughts on why employees are putting emphasis on working for an organization that cares? And how are you seeing employers respond from a human capital perspective?
Yeah, so the past few years have really changed everyone's perception, and it's really changed what's important to employees. They've experienced loss of loved ones. Juggling childcare, elder care responsibilities. I mean, it's really been complex and extremely taxing on employees. And so, they've really been stretched to the limit emotionally, psychologically, physically, mentally. And so they're really coming to their employers. They found their voice and they're coming to their employees and they're asking for help. And I really think it makes a lot of sense because it's the employers that are providing their healthcare benefits. So it makes perfect sense that they would come to their employers to meet their needs in these areas. So as a matter of fact, 82% of the respondents from our survey actually state that employees see their employers having a responsibility of care for their workforce. And so, employees aren't suffering in silence anymore. They are going to their employer. They're asking for mental health and well-being resources. They're asking for help with familial responsibilities and with financial resources. However, the survey was very interesting because it indicated that 65% of employees feel that their employers actually demonstrate care, while 87% of employers feel that they demonstrate care. So that's a very significant perception gap that I do believe needs to be addressed. While employers are really doing their best, as Deb said, to act holistically and really approach this from a holistic perspective, they are being more compassionate. They are leading with compassion and understanding. And I think what's happening is that there is a renewed realization that if an employee's individual needs aren't being met, they're not going to be productive. They're not going to be able to be successful. Organizations are really encouraging employees to speak up and let them know what they need. And in response, employers are really working toward personalizing the employee experience, expanding their benefits, expanding their total rewards to address multiple issues holistically and really, address well-being. And I think that's really going to go a long way in helping meet employees' needs.
Okay, sorry about that. Something popped up in the middle of my screen. All right, we're going to jump over to Heidi. Heidi, we know how important it is to help employees value and use the benefits that their employers offer. I can't imagine the frustration employers feel when you feel you're offering robust benefits and people aren't just simply aren't using them. However, as with all things multi-generational, we see that 52% of employees, 55% or older, report completely understanding their benefits, while 22% of those ages 18 to 24 claim to understand theirs. What are some of the things employers can do to improve, we're calling it healthcare literacy,
Yep.
of their entire employee population, as well as promote the idea of healthcare consumerism?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you some really tactical things that you can apply when we talk about healthcare literacy, because your employees are going to be put in the middle of this new transparency legislation where they're going to be required to understand what these new tools and what this means. And what we're seeing is many employers are already providing information and education about this new consumer tool as of January 1. And, one of the ways in which they're doing it is they're using it as an opportunity to educate healthcare literacy, meaning that, putting in a value based benefit saying, look, value based very simply is a non discriminatory incentive to your employee to encourage a plan participant to adopt or engage a desired behavior. So, for example, hey, we're going to waive your deductible if you go to the Center of Excellence. So, some employers are using these tactical tools right now in order to start incenting their employees. So, as they look at the cost of care and quality and those decisions, that they're also incented to make some of these decisions. One key point I want to make, Kim, real quickly, is that if you look back at that stat, employees age 55 and older went through the managed care evolution. Okay.
Right.
They had to learn a new way to access their medical plan through primary care gatekeeping. So I think we can adopt what we learned from the past and make that correlation and say, you know what, these new data points are valuable. and that teach them how to select their providers and how to become more prudent consumers.
Right. Well, and certainly the way we educate has to change. I mean, we're talking
Absolutely.
to a different generation, right? And so, we learned, I was around when there were no networks. There were no, we
Yeah.
definitely have come through, a lot of changes and just adapted to that. So it's certainly understandable. Okay. Well, now we're going to jump into maintaining affordable benefits. So that's a section of the report where, all these things have to come together, obviously, for the employer and the employee. It has to be affordable for the employer and it has to be affordable for the employee. It doesn't do any good to offer them if they can't afford to buy them. So we're going to jump into that. We've discussed the need to double down on personalization in times of ongoing stress, as well as the need to pair benefits with ongoing communication. So all those things are important. Now, let's talk about the affordable benefits side. So, we're going to hear quite a bit from Heidi in this because obviously, as the practice leader for cost containment, this is where she lives. So, Heidi, can you address the importance of measuring and adjusting, as well as some of the possible solutions NFP can offer in this area?
Absolutely. So the old adage, you need to define it to measure it, and then you need to measure it to manage it and put controls to monitor it to identify, valid progress and outcomes. For those of you who have interacted with me, I'm the tactician. I'm the, hey, this is how we make it work, and data drives the discussion. So really, I want to focus on 5 really fast key points in the time that we have. To determine the effectiveness of your programs, data really needs to tell the story. And what I mean by that is that even with small employers, look at your utilization data, but for those that are a little bit larger, your advanced data analytics. What is the data telling you? And the data is going to drive you to certain positions, how to address cost and quality and value for your population, in addition to all of the other tools like surveys, etc. So the 5 things: number 1, establish a baseline. How do you benchmark against your competitors? And as we talked about, we have a diverse, complex workforce. And because of that diversity, Gen Zs, millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers, and traditionalists have different needs, so they purchase differently. So you need to start really with a generational analysis. What does my population look like? Therefore, how can I personalize my benefits? And then identify the cost containment. So number 2, the cost containment levers that you want to pull. We've stopped kind of asking the hard questions in the industry. Transparency is bringing back the visibility to really start asking those questions again. Let's begin with a network analysis. Are we in the most affordable, network that we should be in? Pharmacy pricing, behavioral health and early detection and intervention programs, disease prevention. Have we asked, even if we're fully insured, have we asked whether the case management and the second opinion services are functioning appropriately? So asking those hard questions and deciding the levers, and not to minimize refreshing contribution strategies. And then I would say number 3 is really establishing realistic improvements for yourselves. We have seen that adopting incremental, steps on how to correct identified challenges, we identify a gap in care. Is it really, acceptable to say, hey, I'm going to have a population health change in a quarter? No, it's not realistic. So start establishing realistic, milestones and markers, and your consultants can, help you do that. Also, one thing I would say is in number 4 is effective data monitoring. We are on data overload in some respects, and what we've strived to do is to identify areas that we can take insights to action. And, how do we quantify and detect those types of things? So well-trained advisors and consultants, to be able to bring that insight. One key area which really drives home the point, Kim, is, for example, changes in medication usage can be an immediate indicator of a trend. And clinical pharmacy consulting is an essential area to assist our employers to mitigate, that cost and that risk, especially for specialty and orphan drugs. Many of our NFP clients are currently using our highly skilled pharmacy consulting groups, and I would encourage them to continue to do that. We've already addressed kind of communication and how to effectively do that. But recognize technological advancements allow us the ability to do that. But the sixth point I would bring forward is really vendor, accountability and looking at contracts and identifying what have they agreed to, what are the milestones, what are deliverables, and then introducing performance guarantees and standards where appropriate. NFP takes all of those roles very seriously, and we brought a multitude of solutions to bear in the last year and the last couple of years, and we're continuing to enhance those. So I'm just going to quickly touch on three. Our digital front door, connect. We are one of the only parties out there that aggregates data for our clients, and that digital backbone really improves our clients' experience within our ecosystem. The second is we've expanded the comprehensive suite of data analytic tools, and that is really to focus on making those insights actionable. So we'll continue to do that in helping clients identify gaps in cares, et cetera. The third that I'm the most excited about, which is TPNet. NFP made a considerable investment in the last, year in getting and acquiring these massive data sets for both hospital and payer posted data to be able to empower our clients to independently evaluate what is the most cost effective medical network for you. And through that tool, it is a claims repricing tool. It stands for transparent pricing and network analysis, and that's what it does. So we're able to proactively assist our clients to mitigate both the risk and the potential disruption by allowing them access to this tool, and it is a value add within our framework. So from a unique perspective, it's exciting times. And with these wholesale market changes, being able to have visibility to the true cost of care can be extremely beneficial during renewal negotiations. And I would just say this is true also of smaller employers. It will improve your awareness of the art of the possible and what's happening, because purchasing of healthcare going forward truly is going to be accessed differently, assessed for quality, and eventually used to validate outcomes for care.
Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot to unpack. But
It is.
but as Heidi mentioned, I mean, our consultants here at NFP are trained on some of these solutions and recommendations. So you shouldn't have any problem speaking to them about that. So Maria, can you quickly speak to the importance of benchmarking, surveying, providing feedback to employees in the benefits offering process? I think you help HR teams do that all the time. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. In the constant war for top talent, employers really want to know what their competitors are offering. And it's really crucial that they understand where they fall within the market so that they can make changes accordingly. NFP, as you mentioned, Kim, NFP Human Capital Solutions has helped numerous clients with benchmarking projects where we benchmark their benefits as well as their total rewards that really help organizations make educated decisions on where to spend their money, what really makes the most sense. And so including employees in this process through surveys and constant communication and feedback is so crucial, because it really creates a win-win situation. Employers will really understand where to put their investment dollars when it comes to benefits, and purchase benefits and procure benefits that employees will actually utilize. And employees actually feel heard, and they know that their employer cares about them and they're getting the benefits that they really need. I think it's so important to make sure that you're engaging your employees and not wasting your money on benefits employees won't use.
Right. Well, I think what happens a lot of times, and I know, even sometimes in the way we communicate, I don't communicate to employees, but we think a lot about sending them communications out. We think less about getting the feedback in. And I think that is we've seen such a significant change in because of all these generational differences and, those kind of things. So feedback is very important and something that every employer should do. So Heidi, I think on the next question, I think you'll have to cut it short just a little bit because we've got only a few minutes left. But in terms of managing costs by optimizing benefits, are there some other key components in that cost containment strategy that maybe you didn't mention in your last response that you want to touch on?
Yeah, all I'm going to say is that again, allow data to drive the discussion and the decisions, and early detection and intervention programs are truly, you need to manage your high costs claimants, and there's different ways to do it through point solutions, but you really want to minimize the backfill of chronic conditions, and the best way and the most effective way to do that is through early detection and intervention programs.
Okay. All right. Well, I think with that, and I know Deb, you had maybe one more question, but I think we're out of time. So, what I'd like to do is close a little bit with some closing remarks from Deb. So, Deb, as we approach another year of annual enrollment season, and it's hard to believe that we're already thinking about annual enrollment season, but I know many of you are. And with our brain on, what are a couple things you would recommend as it relates to evaluating and potentially adopting the trends we're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I'll quickly just recap what we've talked about because I think that's most important. It really starts with you. A trend doesn't go anywhere unless you adopt it and move it forward and socialize it. So just know how you show up with trends, what your relationship to change is, know how much energy you have while you start evaluating trends. And then while you're doing so, just notice if you're brain on or brain off so that you can really turn back on and be your powerhouse and get to that vision. I don't know if you can see, but I have a rubber band and it all relates to structural tension, right? At the bottom is your reality, at your top is your vision, especially for annual enrollment. And if you're not mentally strong, time, your thoughts will slowly wheedle down to status quo and we'll be stuck with Groundhog Day all over again. So stay creative and stay brain on is my ending remarks.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for attending. I think many of you asked in the chat whether you're going to receive these materials, and the answer is yes. You should all who have attended or who registered to attend should receive an email tomorrow. It'll be in the morning. And we'll definitely send along the presentation. We'll send along for those of you who qualified for the HRCI credits. You'll have a link there where you can get your certificate. And then we're formally launching, as Deb mentioned, her book formally launches on August 8th. We're formally launching the NFP trend report next week. So you'll be able to find it on our website and that kind of thing. So thank you again. And Amber, did you have anything to close?
Yes. Thank you to our speakers for sharing your valuable time and expertise with us today. To reiterate, today's presentation was recorded, and we will be sharing the recording in the coming days. At the end of this call, a survey will populate in a new window. Please take a brief moment to complete the survey, as it lets us know what topics are important to our listeners and helps make our education program as current and relevant as possible. That concludes our webinar for today. Thank you everyone for joining us, and have a great day.